we go. So, you might have to accept it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Alex, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the first tranche of interviews that I'm essentially doing with my friends and family. The MD that I'm doing is how does the interplay between social and mainstream media impact upon global public health communications during a pandemic? And the plan for this was to trial a few of them on my friends and then get ethics and then go off and do it.
Yeah.
But then since New Year's Eve and then the first and then the second, the ones that I've trialed have gone so well, I'm going to speak to my supervisor and get retrospective ethics for it and use it. Everything will be anonymized in terms of the transcript, and nobody will know that it's you. They'll just know you're a mammal with that's a CEO of a medical comms.
Of a very successful medical communications agency.
Okay, yes, that's what I'm going to say. Yes, exactly that. So here we go. So 2020 has been a year like no other. The purpose of this semi-structured interview is to explore your views on the role various forms of media have had on how you personally have processed and reacted to evolving news of the pandemic. So the first part is about recollections of when you first heard about COVID-19. So what were your recollections and when did you first hear about COVID-19?
I think the first time I remember it being called COVID-19 was when I was in Australia, just the week before lockdown.
Okay.
I think before then, I might be wrong, but I'm not sure. I remember the.
No, you're right.
A long time ago now.
Yeah, before then it was different.
I remember it called that.
No, it wasn't, because before then it was the novel coronavirus. And then one of the things of this MD that I'm doing is I'm reviewing the 200 daily situation reports that the World Health Organization put out. And for the first 45 or so of them, they weren't talking about COVID-19. They were talking about novel coronavirus. And the other stuff that's come out of these interviews that's caused problems in the sense that people thought that, oh, it's coronavirus, my Dettol kills coronavirus, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Because they lost the novel bit. But okay, so so presumably when you went to Australia, the stuff that was in the media, did it bother you about going to Australia was it December you went?
No, it was in
March.
First week of March, I think.
Yeah, sorry. So the stuff that you'd heard, did you even think about not going?
Not seriously. I think we considered it, sort of, but not seriously.
What was the reason for that? As in, not seriously, plus.
Well, at the time, up until I was in Australia, I thought it was probably just going to blow over. Didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. Yeah, I can't remember, but I certainly didn't think. Well, I also had the tickets booked and all the meetings organised and all that, so it wasn't like I wasn't going to go.
But then when you were in Australia and you saw, presumably, what was their response when you were out there, if any?
Well, they were just starting to not have visitors. Some of the companies not have visitors to the office the week that I was there.
Yeah.
Not many, but in fact, I think it was only toward the end of that week and possibly the week I left is when they really started to do it. They were talking about it, but I remember I had a meeting with BI in Australia, and we went into their office. It was all kind of fairly normal. Although I was talking to you, I remember just before I went into that meeting, and that's when it was starting to dawn on me that it was pretty, it was going to be quite serious at that point.
Yeah.
And I think everyone was starting to realise it was going to get quite serious, I think. And there was going to be a period of lockdown. I don't think anybody at that time thought it was going to be as long as this, or anyone that I was talking to apart from you. But I can't remember. It was a while ago.
Okay, thank
You
you.
certainly had the most pessimistic view, which turned out to be the most accurate.
Thank you. That's very kind. So, what sorts of media do you use to get your news?
Well, in the context of COVID, I think that's quite an interesting question because normally I get all my news from Twitter. And I think COVID as is one of the first breaking news stories I can think of where social media is not a very good place to follow the developments in it, because they just get because it's fairly on the whole it's fairly subjective. It's not political really. It's pretty unsubjective, and it relies on fairly but you need to have quite good understanding and analysis of the facts. And the trouble with social media, of course, is it's full of everyone's got a fucking opinion, and 99% of the time they're completely mad.
Yeah.
So projecting. Whereas, I remember the first time I started using social media to follow news, it was Twitter, was when that Islamic nutter cut the head off, chopped the head off the musician soldier in East London.
Oh, Lee Rigby.
Rigby, that's it, Rigby. And that's a really good example of highlighting how, in the sense that it's a single incident. Following it on social media was far more accurate and up to date than trying to follow it on BBC. The BBC would be hours behind what you could find on social. Whereas COVID, it's kind of like more of a rumbling, ongoing, breaking story, never ending, and it's really, and all you get really on social media in terms of COVID is projection of a whole load of boring culture war issues onto what's a relatively, at any one point in time, is a scientifically definable issue, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So it becomes, so it's really bad for social, in my opinion, that sort of thing.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Really bad to follow on social. It's really you just get bogged down in culture war stuff around, freedom or lack of freedom to wear a mask, for example. Which is just not relevant to most people, I don't think.
Do you think it depends? Do you think it depends on who you follow on Twitter?
No, maybe. I don't think many people are exempt from the culture wars these days, though, are they?
And when you say culture wars, what do you mean?
Well, there's everything is put since 2000. Well, since I don't know when exactly, but since politics changed at some point post 2008 from a sort of general sort of consensus-based politics to a very identitarian, divisive form of political affiliation, analysis and affiliation. Since that's happened, every fucking issue has to be viewed through the prism of essentially whether you're on the right or the left these days. But the right and left being defined in different ways to how they used to. Identitarian, nationalistic type stuff versus identitarian, they would say woke, wouldn't they? Stuff on the left.
Okay. Yeah.
So everything's put through that prism, right? So everything about COVID is essentially in social media, at least that I see, or the vast majority of it, unless you're just sticking purely to certain scientific analysis. But even then, I'm still not sure. It's still very heavily politicized. It's all about the mass thing. It's just mental. It's just about people. It's about whether you subscribe to that kind of pseudo-libertarian nonsense that people like Lawrence Fox propagate, or God knows, Piers Morgan, I suppose, on the left.
So that's very interesting. So do you think that social media, and this is completely off-piste, but this is the point of a semi-structured interview, do you think social media has been a good thing or a bad thing for public health communication around COVID?
I think social media has been really, really bad for political discourse and political discourse. Not necessarily engagement. I think it's probably been very good for political engagement, but in terms of discourse, it's been terrible. And the trouble with, and as I say, the problem for the communication of things, issues around COVID, is that they, particularly on social media, as they become politicized and therefore wrapped up in fairly divisive, non-consensual, in the sense that there's no consensus on the politics. The way that the political divide now views even what should be relatively benign consensual issues, if you see what I mean. There's no consensus on how one should view it. A mask, whether you should wear a mask or not should be pretty, it might change over time as the science changes, but it should be a pretty factual, non-controversial topic. But social media turns it into drives it into becoming a controversial topic because it gets dragged into the culture war.
Yeah, and do you think, in terms of chicken and egg, in terms of culture war and social media, the business models behind social media companies are just a 21st century replication of, it's that catchy headline, it's that clickbaity title, it's all driven to drive engagement? And although the monetization is different in terms of I'm not paying to use Facebook, they're actually paying because I'm paying through what they know about me. Do you think that it's actually the problem is rooted in the politics sphere, or do you think the problem is rooted in the tech company sphere in terms of that fueling that culture war? Because it must have started somewhere.
It lies in the social media and the way that social media is structured. The opportunity for highly divisive culture wars has existed for years. And yes, you need a reason for it to ignite and for it to gain momentum and for various political movements to feed off it, such as the sort of neolibertarian movements in the UK particularly, the nationalist populist movements in the UK and the US. I don't know about other countries, I'm going to talk about those countries. Those have all fed off and have risen to prominence as a result, largely, I think, as a result of social media. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and it comes back to that thing where you say everybody's got an opinion, but everybody's also got the opportunity to seed and spread that opinion, whether they're an expert or whether they're knowledgeable or not.
Everyone can express the opinion, but not everyone's opinion can be heard by other people, right? And so the way social media works is that everybody it's not one big network, it's millions and millions of micro networks. And each network is usually, in my opinion, I haven't really back this up, this is just theory, I guess, right? But most people's networks are made up of people who share the same opinion as them. So there's an echo chamber. So it just propagates and gets them more and more outraged, essentially, on every issue. Even something as that should be as non-political as something as COVID, right? Just to bring it back to COVID. But then stuff can breach those micro networks when it becomes, so-called viral. And the only stuff that becomes so-called viral is stuff that is, it needs to be pulled, essentially, and shared within those micro networks because it outrages, it provokes a very strong, it doesn't have to outrage necessarily, but provokes a very, very strong reaction. That's the only reason it jumps from those across micro networks.
Yeah.
And those micro networks and those strong opinions are usually highly divisive. They're either ones that the people within the network don't agree with, or the ones that they really, really fucking agree with. Either way, this idea that social media is this kind of democratized environment for sharing ideas is complete bullshit. It's just millions and millions of echo chambers.
I think it started out as a democratization of knowledge, and that was the point of it. But then the way that to monetize that, it's gone down to that two different.
I don't think it's about the commercials, actually. I think it's just purely in the nature of the attempt to democratize communication in that way, or publishing really in many ways, because the thing is, not everyone can hear. Everyone has the right now. It's about hearing people, not so much about the right to publish. Like before, you could, like say in ancient Greece or whatever, you could call the meeting and everyone would turn up, but logistically, not everyone could express what they wanted to do. Only a few people could do it, and hence, you sort of flash forward 2,000 years, and you've got various different forms of essentially parliamentary, multi-party democracies, right? In order to give representation to the views. As soon as everyone can press send on their view, everyone can do it, but not everyone's going to hear it, unless you coalesce into these naturally forming echo chambers. I don't know what you call them, other day. It's probably something else, but they're like,
oh, they are echo chambers. Yeah, okay.
And it's a natural coalescence that takes place. It's a natural consequence of giving everybody essentially the right to speak. Because they will only get heard if they form these natural groups.
Very interesting. So okay, so one thing I've written about in the
well, they will only feel like they're getting heard. Sorry, not
necessarily. They can get heard. It's feel like they're getting heard, but then also they can get heard if it punctuates different ones.
They're different. They are different things, though. Where it sits, I don't know, but it's somewhere between getting heard by people who have a shared view, or it's a feeling of being heard, i.e., some kind of almost community instinct. I don't really know what it is.
But then, interestingly, so yeah, what you've said is something that I've stumbled upon in terms of with social media that I didn't even know about it. I kind of did know, but I couldn't articulate it in the way that you did. In terms of, because I think about the stuff that I've done that's gone viral, there's certain commonalities to why it went viral.
What is that then? What are the commonalities?
Like the
controversial, basically.
Yeah, the one where I was outside Lincoln County Hospital. I'd written what I was going to say about Hunt to Kay Burley because I knew it was going to. Excuse me. I didn't know it was going to go viral. The reason that I did it was I knew it was I thought incorrectly that it would be the last time I'd get to go on Sky because the junior doctors thing was nosediving and it was going to die out. And I thought that the news would just move on to other things and I would never have that platform again. So I went for it, and but it was very lapped up by people on the left and more pro-NHS. And I was the first person, or one of the first people, to articulate something in a way that's quite calm, quite reasoned, not shouty, but also quite forceful and get something across. And that went to 600,000 people, 660,000 people on my social media. And to be honest, Sky wouldn't keep on asking me back unless I could communicate in a way that was good content for them. Now, that's slightly different because the thing that I'm going to get onto, which I can see you're thinking about, and hold that thought, because one of the things that I wrote in my dissertation is the difference between a deferrer and a referrer society. Are those terms that you've heard of?
Say again?
A deferrer society and a referrer society.
No, don't know that.
So it kind of, let me just talk to you about the definitions and the differences between old and new media. And then, because one of the chapters that I'm writing about is about the evolving media landscape. But if I go to the glossary of terms, so new media is defined as the advent and then widespread adoption of the internet is very much seen as the transition point between traditional and new media. New media can be considered to include electronic video games and entertainment, as well as the internet and the plethora of social media channels now available. Whereas traditional media can be assumed to mean all communication means that existed prior to the internet, included printed materials, whether that be books, magazines, newspapers, broadcast communications, TV and radio, as well as film and music. Now, the traditional media environment is a deferrer type thing. There's like you said, in ancient Greece or Rome, everybody would come together, somebody would stand on the stage and they would propagate their view to the masses.
Yeah.
Whereas the referrer media environment is everybody can check with their friend and their family and their colleague, and there's this constant noise around it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So now, what are your thoughts on what you've said, and also what the deferrer and the referrer media landscapes or environments or societies are?
Okay, so you could say, as a caveat to what I just said, it might be argued. Some people might argue, and I probably would have believed this or agreed with this pre-COVID or a few years ago, is that that use of social media can facilitate both, and in that it's referrer driven, but there's lots of referrals to deferred sources, if I put it that way.
Yeah.
So you could say that it drives people's use of traditional media in some ways, right? Particularly over things like COVID, where you're hearing a lot of subjective, ill-informed nonsense or culture war-driven, ideological guff, and you want to find out what you want a sort of second opinion, an independent opinion, or whatever you want to call it, which traditional media still, I know it's taken a bit of a knock in the last 4 or 5 years, but still is generally referred as being a more authoritative source than, say, I don't know, Lawrence Fox or whatever, particularly on scientific matters, right? But then the trouble is these things are shared in such a political context. Look at this thing that I've read that's completely stupid, for example, or look at this thing I've read that really, really endorses my opinion. So as a source of the information, it's a source of deferred communication or information. I'm not quite sure what context you'd use that word, but as a source of traditional media, actually in the context of COVID, I'm not sure it's that good. It may work quite well in terms of traffic, but I'm not sure it would. You'd have to look at the numbers. I think in terms of, it might well work in terms of numbers, but my contention would still be that it's driving people to, there's an inherent bias as to how the information is shared. Therefore, there's an inherent bias to the information that is being consumed, if I put it that way.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, social media is a referral communication platform or a referral-driven communication thing. I don't know what you call it, but and traditional media is deferral. How have they impacted on each other? I would imagine, in terms of if you could measure it in this way, as a way of communicating things like non-scientific issues and public health issues like COVID, probably the relationship between the two has probably been negative, I think. And then separately, would I question, has social media been good for disseminating information about COVID? I think unequivocally it has not. And what about traditional media? That's really not a question for me. That'd be a question for you. It's almost like it's a non-contentious, factual, scientific issue. Has the Guardian got its science right or not? Has the Times got its science right or not at a specific point in time? Okay. I couldn't really comment.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. I kind of don't. Well, I'm going to ask you through the other ones were recollections when you heard. How did that news make you feel when you heard the news of COVID? How did it make you feel?
Well, when I very first heard about it, didn't really think about it.
Okay.
When it started the week before lockdown, I was shitting my pants. Mainly because I knew, because you were in my ear going, this is going to be the worst thing that's ever going to happen. Basically, kiss goodbye to your kids. I can't remember now, but it was really fucking terrifying.
I didn't say that.
It was words to the effect of, I can't remember. It wasn't that bad, but it was heavy. And I was like, bloody hell,
I spared you the worst stuff in terms of, I knew
Thank God. I knew that had a nervous breakdown with the good stuff.
Mate, my mates were telling me that, what were they telling me? That they were getting their affairs.
The stuff in Italy and all that.
No.
Is that what you mean? The stuff
No, they were getting their affairs in order and making sure that they 34-year-old couple with a couple of kids that are 2 and 3, they were making sure that they had the appropriate life insurances, wills in place, and all that sort of stuff. And I definitely didn't tell you that.
I didn't know, you didn't, thank God. Are they medics?
They are medics, yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying, that sort of stuff. And the stuff that was coming out of Italy at the time, just in that week, because I remember you telling me when I was in Australia, the stuff that was coming about, basically the decision, the fact that they're having to let some people die and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And at the time, it was just beginning. So where it could lead to was absolutely horrific. I mean, luckily they sort of tailed off after a bit.
So
it was pretty awful. But,
it did tail off after a bit. But the trouble is, right, back in the day, I told you to get a pulse oximeter.
Yes.
The purchase that I've made this morning is this.
What's that? Oh, it's a gas mask.
Yeah, because me wearing masks when I go into the supermarket now is my mask protects you, and yours protects mine if you're so good to wear it, rather than the fucking kind of chin hammock that people seem to use.
Yeah.
Now, I also know that now they've got the MHRA suggesting that you can have a 2-dose schedule of a vaccine, where one Pfizer one and one AZ one, and just mix and match and off you go.
They're not saying that, are they?
Yep. Last night. That's why I've started pulling these interviews together quicker, because they did that last night. It came out.
I know they said that they were deferring the Moderna one, or whatever it was, the first one. I didn't know that they were saying that you can mix and match the two. That wouldn't make any sense at all.
The UK have now come out and said, because supply is going to be a problem, they would rather give one person a Pfizer one, and then if there's no Pfizer one, they'd rather give the Pfizer one, obviously. But if there isn't, and the AZ one is available, then take that.
Oh, what, for the second dose?
Yes.
Okay, that's mental.
It is, isn't it?
Well, there's no evidence to say that would work, is there?
Doesn't matter. I mean, experts are out of fashion. We follow the science, but we don't believe in the scientific methods. Don't be silly. I mean, so it's crazy. So when you said you were shitting yourself about Italy, and then did that plateau, or did that get worse or come down, or?
It got crowded out by having to save the business that I work for, or seemingly having to save it. So that sort of having to focus so heavily on that, I kind of lost track of whatever else.
So do you think by focusing on work, do you think that meant that you didn't have headspace to worry about other stuff? So you just complete ostrich approach to it then?
Sort of, yeah. I wouldn't say intentionally, like ostrich.
Unintentional, subconscious.
Unintentional ostrich is probably fair. Yeah.
Unintentional ostrich, love it. Okay. So how do your views vary as compared with your friends and family?
On what?
On COVID.
I'm probably more relaxed about it than my parents or my sister, so the rest of my family.
Yeah.
My sister, for no other reason, that she's got her nanny's a narc, and as a result, grass. So wouldn't can't, has to be very strict about the rules and stuff. My parents, because my mum is shielding.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for the fact that they're both very strict about it, I probably would have met up with them at Christmas. But,
okay. And that's interesting. So it's more the other people sort of pushing you away rather than you not wanting to go there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I want to go around my parents' house every weekend anyway. I mean, I see them even when there's no COVID, I see them twice a year. So it's not like I'm desperate. But I've got kids, right? I've got 2 kids and my wife is a teacher.
Yeah, there's childcare.
Well, no, it's more the fact that we're continually exposed to the risk, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife's interacting with hundreds of teenage children a day, right? Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And my kids are both, one's at nursery and one's at primary school. So
yeah. Okay.
I mean, that'll change a bit. That'll change a bit. But then as a result of that, you just got to, you've got to be, either my wife gives up a job, we pull the kids out of school, which doesn't seem like a very palatable option. Either that or you just sort of resign yourself and just say, well, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not going to lose my mind over it because it's out of my control, really.
No, I think that's good. And then, so when did you change any behaviours when you heard the news about Italy?
I was quite slow to wear a mask. I was quite good about the hands, because at the time the advice was based around transmission through hands, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So at that point, I was quite, I probably always will be. And then since the guidance changed on the masks, I always wear a mask, I do whatever, and whatever.
Okay.
I haven't been around to anyone's house.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I just follow the rules, really.
Okay. What is your awareness? This part is the origins, and do you need to go? Because we can come back to part 2 and 3 and 4.
She'll shout me when
okay,
so
part 2 is origins of COVID-19. So what is your awareness on theories as to how COVID-19 has come into existence?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, as far as I'm aware, it was someone ate a pangolin. I either ate a pangolin in a after buying at a wet market in Wuhan, or it was a man-made thing that probably from their bio warfare unit or something that escaped and blah blah blah, all that. Okay. How accurate either of those views are, I don't know, but that's my understanding.
I mean, I was going to say, what would you deem as a trusted source to get information around origins specifically? A trusted source in the media, if any?
Origin's a really good example of the culture war, right? I'm very open-minded to the view that it was a man-made mistake or otherwise by the Chinese government. But the trouble is that view is so firmly held on the opposite side of the culture war to me. I have to treat it with a certain amount of disdain. My son mentioned it the other day, and I had to. I said that.
Who mentioned it?
No, I did, and I explained to him. I said that Kish says blah blah blah. This is his view. He shares the same view, and he knows what he's talking about. And I was like, okay. But I was like, but be careful when you talk about it. Don't talk about it like this outside the family, because people may misunderstand the reason why we might think this is the case, and they might think we're basically racist. So just be careful. Just be careful about that stuff.
But
he got it. He got it. He was like, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But your son is what, 7? No,
10.
10. So your son is 10 years old, and he's come into contact with something somewhere online, presumably, that is suggesting for him to say that it's man-made.
I mean, if it's online, it'll be YouTube. But I suspect it's probably his mates, and his mates have probably picked it up from their racist dads. I mean, let's be honest. That's probably how he's got to come across it.
Wow. Okay. Does detailed knowledge of the science behind COVID-19 help, hinder, or have no effect on your day-to-day response?
Sorry, say that question again. I didn't understand it.
Does detailed knowledge of the science behind COVID-19 either help, hinder, or have no effect on your day-to-day response?
Well, I can't claim to have detailed knowledge of the scientific of the science, but if I did, it would help, if I put it that way.
Okay. And has your understanding of COVID increased, decreased, or stayed the same over the past 9 to 12 months?
Could it decrease? I think it might have. It's possible. It's possible. It's relative to where the science is. It's decreased. If I put it that way, relative to the scientific understanding of it, it's decreased for sure.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So,
but that's because of the culture war issue. It's difficult to engage with it for that reason, I think, for me.
Okay. So this has widely been described in the media as a once-in-a-century event. in your view, could an outbreak such as this happen again in our lifetimes?
That's a funny question, isn't it? I don't know. What do I think? So it's because it's not a factual question, is it? It's to do with my perception of the science, or the perception of that statement.
Yeah.
My perception of that statement, because you're saying it, is that it's scientifically true, and therefore it's unlikely to be, or scientifically robust, and therefore it's unlikely to happen again in a lifetime.
I'm literally saying that widely in the media, rightly or wrongly, they're describing this as a once in a century event, because the last time it happened was in 1918, the Spanish flu. So in your view, could an outbreak such as this happen again in our lifetimes?
I think it's unlikely, my view, only because, not scientifically, but only because the government's responses will be that much better. You would have thought, because the economic impact has been so catastrophic. So I'd be amazed if they make the same. They couldn't make the same mistakes again.
So there was
could an outbreak happen? Yeah. Could it happen on the same level and globally? Feels a bit unlikely to me.
So okay, that's interesting. 30 billion a year it was projected to cost from a health surveillance and global health security. It would cost 30 billion a year worldwide to put in place some kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, well spent.
But it is money well spent, because we're talking about a $16 trillion hit to between now and 2025.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe they'll let it happen again like this.
No, I would be inclined to agree as well. But okay.
But scientifically, yes. I mean, they happen all the time, don't they?
So scientifically, 100%. So this is something that I'm reading called spillover. Now, I don't know whether you want to read this, but it's.
If you found it disturbing, then I'm never going to read it.
Okay, fine. So I found it disturbing, right? And also I hate reading, but I've got to page 88, and I only had this come through to me on the 29th of December.
Okay.
So if I've gone through 88 pages and I think it's scary, and I'm almost a little bit upset that there's only 550 left, because I'm quite a big chunk of the way through it.
Who wrote it?
David Quayman, Quammen.
Who's he?
He is a recipient of the Academy Award in Literature from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and authors of 8 books on science and nature. The Song of the Dodo won the BP Natural World Book Prize.
When was this published? Is it post-COVID, or is it pre-COVID?
2012.
Yeah, gosh, okay.
And because you asked some questions, I'm just going to read what it says on the cover.
Go.
First, a horse falls ill. Fever, swelling, bloody froth. Then 13 others drop dead. The foreman at the stables becomes ill, and the trainer dies. What is going on? ? Spillover, animal infections, and the next human pandemic.
God. Well, I mean, they don't just come from. I mean, we had. It wasn't so long ago that Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease was going to be kill every single person in the Western Hemisphere, was it?
No.
I mean, some of these things don't materialise, but then some of them, some of them do, don't they? But the fact that these diseases do move from species to species continuously, but I never realised, really, to be honest. I never realised how often.
I mean, at the back of this book, it says, as globalization spreads and we destroy ancient ecosystems, we encounter dangerous and strange infections that originate in animals, but that can be transmitted to humans. Diseases that were contained are being set free, and the results are potentially catastrophic. In a journey that takes him from southern China to the Congo, from Bangladesh to Australia, David Quayman tracks these infections to their source and asks what we can do to prevent some new pandemic spreading across the face of the earth. It's a really good book.
Actually, well, they all, now you've mentioned it, pretty much all of them. AIDS, didn't it? That came from monkeys somehow. Whoever fucked the monkey was the patient zero, wasn't he, as they say. There's loads of them. It happens really frequently, actually, doesn't it? It just doesn't really occur to him.
Yeah, there's Ebola, which is a
Ebola.
terrifying
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah, it is.
HIV,
There's the Middle Eastern bird flu thing.
MERS, SARS,
SARS, yeah.
H1N1, swine flu.
God, yeah.
There was also some more. Hold on.
Mad cow's disease. Does that count?
Yeah. Mad cow disease. That's the CJD thing that you said. I thought I highlighted them. Hold on. Oh, Marburg. Bloody hell. Have you heard of
What's
Marburg?
that? No, what's that?
That's in the, if you Google it, M-A-H.
It's not going to show me those disgusting pictures of people's knobs dropped off or anything like that, is it?
I don't know. I haven't Googled it.
M-A, how's it spelled? M-A what?
M-A-H-B-E-R-G, I think.
Is it B-U-R-G? Marburg.
But maybe U-R-G, yeah, Marburg. Yeah, M-A-R-B-U-R-G.
Marburg virus, got it, yeah. Ugh, sounds like Ebola.
So,
It's a sexually transmitted disease.
is it?
It can be transmitted between people via body fluids through unprotected sex and broken skin.
I mean, I think a lot of viruses can because...
yeah, it's got symptoms similar to Ebola.
Ebola, yeah. The case fatality rate for Marburg hemorrhagic fever is between 23 and 90%.
Wow. Where does it come from? Mosquitoes. Oh no, it's primates. God, just stay away from the monkeys and the pangolins. Seems to be the moral of this.
Pretty much.
No more bushmeat for me.
No more bushmeat. Well, interestingly, in this book as well, he says in Africa it's called bushmeat. In America, it's called game.
No, I suppose it is any kind of wild animal, really, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah. And also another book that I'm reading called How to Survive a Pandemic talks about chicken. And they said that if chicken was a water supply, it'd be turned off because it's 99% contaminated. And somebody's very eloquent. Yeah, somebody very eloquently put their shit in the meat. Because when they hang a chicken and string it up and they defeather it, break its neck, there's then a claw that comes in and takes out the bowels of the chicken to eviscerate it. And that claw often perforates the bowel, so it puts shit in the meat.
Oh, gross.
But anyway, we digress.
I don't eat meat. It's disgusting.
We digress. So the final section is subsequent pandemic behaviours. 3A. 3-word slogans have been a big part of the UK government communications. Are there any that particularly resonate with you and why?
Only the latest one, which I've forgotten. The one about crowds.
What? Hands, space?
No. There was crowd.
Close contact, crowded areas, and confined spaces, and duration and volume. That one.
I know. No, it was an NHS slogan, not a government one. No, not really, because they're all a bit confusing and nebulous. So I didn't really pay much attention to any of the government 3-stage things. I don't know why they did it like that.
That's fine. The vastly, well, some people in interviews have said because they need to get it down to a level that people understand.
Yeah, then it needs to be one thing, not 3.
Okay. And then the vastly varying way COVID-19 affects people has meant shielding and asymptomatic transmission has been vital. What do these terms mean to you? You've talked about shielding already, so you clearly understand what that is. But what does asymptomatic transmission mean?
Well, it's transmitting the virus when you haven't got any symptom, although the latest data on that seems to suggest there's not a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm really glad that you said that. I was just forwarding you a paper that says that, exactly that. But you're the first person that I've spoken to in 9 of these that is actually up to date on the asymptomatic transmission not really being a thing.
I'm probably the only one with school-age kids, I'd imagine, on that basis, or in a minority at least.
Why? Is that because you think that you would have got it if it was a thing because of the kids?
It sticks out as something I look out for in the coverage because it's relevant. Also because my wife's a teacher as well. Because most of the kids are asymptomatic, so asymptomatic transmission is quite a big, or lack of asymptomatic transmission is a big deal for decreasing my risk profile, basically.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. But to be fair, the 11 to 18-year-olds do have it. They have the receptors, but they don't seem to get sick by it. Probably because I think they're fit, they've got physiological reserve, they're starting out life. What we don't know at the moment is whether this new variant has changed enough to affect kids that are up to 11.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's interesting. But that's good.
Until we do, there's no point worrying about it, is there?
No. And then fine. Hold on. So, are you more likely to listen to a friend, expert, or celebrity when it comes to adopting behavioural modifications related to keeping you and your loved ones safe?
All three in one person, of course.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I wouldn't say that as an expert or a celebrity, but anyway.
You've been on Sky News.
Well, I have occasionally, yeah. Oh, they're going to get in touch with me to go on a podcast with Dermot.
Dermot who? O'Leary?
Murnaghan.
Murnaghan? O'Leary,
Yeah.
what am I talking about? Of course it's Murnaghan. Excellent, I like him, he's good.
I emailed his producer because I saw her on Twitter and she goes, if you want to get involved with the podcast, get in touch. So I emailed her. Then I wished her a happy Christmas on New Year's or whatever on Twitter. And she goes, yeah, thanks, I got your email. I'll definitely be in touch in the new year.
Excellent, that'd be good.
So that will be really good. And that's another thing that I'll ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But yeah, so, okay, so that's good.
But, I'm in an unusual situation there, though, to be fair. It's not about my media and information consumption habits. It's simply that I've got access to you and you understand the science really well. So why would I go anywhere else?
No, thank you. That's cool. I mean, you say that I understand the science really well, but interestingly, I don't read any of the papers on this, as in scientific papers.
Okay.
I talk to people that I trust, and then Huh? No.
I'll stop listening then.
No, don't stop listening. But what I'm saying is I think there's a massive amount of cognitive bias and a lack of cognitive diversity in how these papers are written. So what I do is I read it or look at it and understand what it is. But then the way I actually pressure test it is have conversations with people where they actually critically appraise it. But I deliberately select people that are not going to just give me the status quo answer.
Right.
And then I assimilate my own judgments.
Right.
But,
Give me 2 minutes.
okay, so I'll be really quick.
Okay. I thought I'm putting you to bed, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only 2 minutes, babe. I'll be 2 minutes. No, it's me doing it. Close the door for me, darling. I didn't, darling.
No, go. It doesn't matter. Alex, we do this.
Not whinging. No, she's whinging because it's my turn to put her to bed. She's not because I'm taking too long. She
Really?
Yeah. She hates it. She always wants Claire to put her to bed, but we have to be quite strict as a result about switching.
Wow.
Otherwise they get their way.
Okay, so I'll be really quick. So when stories arose about people breaking the rules, do you think that helped, hindered, or had no effect on the public health response?
On the public health response, the government's response.
Well, no, as in the public's reaction and the public's
the public's reaction.
The public's adherence to rules, potentially.
Well, I would imagine it reinforced them. So, are you there?
Yeah. So I'm still here. Go on.
So if they're on one side of the culture war, the libertarian, or whatever you want to call it, side of the culture war, then it just simply would have reinforced their behaviour. And if they're on the, what we call it, more publicly minded side, then they would have, I imagine it would have helped.
Wow.
Reinforce that behaviour. That would be my view.
Brilliant. That's really good. Nobody said that before, so thank you. And then, are there any phrases or words that spring to mind about 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic as a whole?
Not as bad as everyone says it was.
Okay, it's nice. It's
Or
nice.
says it is.
It's nice how you say it says it was. Let's see what 2021 has to hold. But anyway, I don't want to.
Oh, well, I thought we were just talking about the year. We were talking about the whole pandemic.
Yeah,
Not that bad would be my.
not that bad.
personal.
Okay, that's very good. So thank you for that. This is the last "Have I got news for you" style faces and phrases of the pandemic
Okay.
round. Who's this and what's his job?
Oh God. He's probably. I can't remember. Oh fucking hell! Chief medical officer, chief scientific officer, something like that. I can't
So
remember the bloody. It's not Chris Whitty. It's the other one. I can't remember.
yeah, it's
It'll come back to me in a minute.
deputy chief medical officer. Would you like me to tell you, or should I just move on?
Tell me.
Jonathan Van Tam.
Van Tam, that was it. Van Tam.
So who's this?
Ooh, don't know. I guess it's the woman in search of test and trace, but I might be wrong.
No, that's a good one to add though. Baroness Dido Harding. I will add her. Thank you. No,
Dido. It's not Dido.
this isn't Dido. This is Jenny Harries, who's the deputy chief medical officer. Who's this?
No idea.
Devi Sridhar. I would follow her on Twitter. She's very interesting. She's I'll tell you what her handle is. Hold on. It is DEVISRIDHAR.
DEVISRI. Devi Sridhar. Got it.
Yeah. So she's awesome and very interesting, and she's a SAGE advisor for Scotland. Who's this guy?
You've gone. Is it just me or is it?
No, I'm still here. Who's this?
Oh, there you go. Oof. It's got a, I don't know, World Health, WHO person maybe?
Yeah, Director General of the World Health Organization. Yeah, who's this? That's Dr. Tedros. Who's this?
I was only guessing because I could see the logo behind.
Oh, okay.
That's someone else, global. I don't know.
Maria Van Kerkhove, the technical lead for COVID-19 for the World Health Organization. Who's this?
I thought it was that little fella from the Harry Potter things, the ginger one, Ron Weasley. But it's not.
No, this is June Rain. She's the chief executive of the MHRA.
Is that common knowledge? People know who she is.
Well, she's starting to have a profile now because I've sent you a video that I'll tell you about in a minute. And then who's that?
Oh, Dominic Cummings.
Okay.
I know that one.
And then this was the messaging when we locked down. It's deliberately pixelated. Can you tell me what the words are?
Say the NHS will be the last one. Stay at home. I don't think we wear a mask, would it? Keep your distance, maybe something like that.
Okay, so it's stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Save lives.
And they said that they were so happy with that one that I spoke to some guy in the Bank of England that I know, and they were absolutely petrified as to how they were going to restart the economy as a result of this, the strength of that slogan.
Yeah, I bet they were. Start with. Yeah, give me 2 seconds.
Final one.
Why have you
Final one.
Okay, I'm just going to finish this thing. There'll be 2 minutes.
Maybe. All right, last one. What's this?
Oh God.
This is the current one.
Well, it's going to stay at home. Don't know.
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
That's very nebulous, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I'm just going to, have you got any final comments or questions or thoughts as to that you'd like to add to this?
Can't think of anything.
No, cool, thank you. So I'm going to stop recording.